Hey, I'm Geoff Burghardt. Welcome to Triple I Mandolin. Well, I played guitar since sixth grade, and when I went to college, the guy in the room next to me played fiddle, and he had this old mandolin, or he had a mandolin that I borrowed for a couple months, and then I bought it. Or no, I bought a cheap one, a Rogue. It's like $50. It's so bad. And after a couple years, I was ready to upgrade, but at the time, this would have been 2001. It was basically a Gibson F9 was the only upgrade that made sense to me, even like a Kentucky 1500. So it was looking at like $3,000, and I couldn't afford that. I was a freshman in college. So I was like, I had built an electric guitar, I had built a couple of lap slides, and I thought I could just build a mandolin. And I can't stop. So that's why I do. So I built like five just on my own, just thinking my way through it. Like the first one, I took a solid piece of wood, cut it in half, hollowed it out, and then glued it back together. It's ridiculous. It's a mandolin sculpture, really. It was the first two. And then I got Siminoff's book for number 5, I believe, and then no real instruction on process after that. And then I just got really deep into the tone aspect of it and learning about how all that works. So what really is, it started with me defining what I'm looking for in mandolin tone, because I think for me at least, my ear picks up differences in mandolins more than any other instrument. Within guitars, I feel like you have a pretty wide range. But I feel like mandolins, you can go out to here as far as what you get out of the instrument. So it started with defining what I want my mandolin to sound like, and then how do I get that? And so there's various different theories out there. Sort of the two main ones in mandolin tuning is deflection, which is just straight up stiffness, like how stiff is the top and the back, and you go from there. The other one is called tap tuning, which is where you tap on various parts or the whole instrument. You look at the resonances that exist in that instrument, and you make modifications to the plates and to try and get those resonances in a certain range. I've settled on using both. It's not proprietary, but I know at this point I know how to get the tone that I want out of my instruments, and it's been a haul for the last 2 or 3 years. I've measured, I think, about 130 mandolins as far as their deflection and their tap tuning, and I've rated them, so I've been able to discover what do the best mandolins have in common, best, i.e. ones that I like the most. And then also, what are not good instruments? What are those doing? So being able to identify the good things and the bad things has been really helpful. So I've got a lot of confidence right now that if you like the way my mandolin sound, that I can build you one. Or I can build me one. Maybe I'll just keep building for myself. I don't know. I can't stop, really. First time I did this, I think, was 2022, where I was like, I'm gonna just start measuring every instrument I can get my hands on. These are all F-style mandolins. So I have 131 instruments, and I'm measuring all kinds of different things. I'm taking note of some of their physical features. I'm doing deflection testing, which I'll show you in a second, doing metrics for those. I'm doing thicknesses for tops and backs. I'm doing resonances for the top and the back and the air chamber. This section here is kind of like bandwidth specific. How's that instrument performing? And then I've also got a bunch of statistical analysis down here. These anything in green or greenish is our correlation values between one thing and another. For instance, there's a 0.59 correlation between the back center thickness and the back deflection. So obviously the thicker it is, it's going to be less, it's going to be more stiff, so less deflection. So that's where everything gets stored. There's also the resonance stuff looks like this. Like if you tap on an instrument, you can do it's called an FFT, a fast Fourier transform, and it'll show you the different resonant peaks that are happening within that instrument. In this case, the main air on this one is around 306. The main top is around 428, and the back is actually split between these two. It's kind of funny. I don't know why it's doing that, but that's triple I number 57 there. The deflection is this, and I already have this set up with an instrument. It's in this cradle. It's wedged in to this bar with these wedges here. There are two dial indicators connected to this makeshift bridge, and the bridge can go up and down, and the dial indicators will tell you how far it moves. So what I do, I take this 20 pounds, and this is about half the pressure, downward pressure, that a set of J74s would put on an instrument. So this is a safe level of weight. Tap it to make sure everything's there, and you can see that this instrument has a deflection of what is that, somewhere around 35 thousandths of an inch with 20 pounds on it. It's a very flexible top. What that'll mean is this will be a nice, thick, chunky bass kind of instrument. One thing I've developed over the last 5 or 6 instruments is I do a brace in the center, and then I also do a connecting rod between the tail block and the neck block. There's a piece of wood inside here that just connects those two. What that does is add a lot of structural stability in this direction, so that when the strings are pulling it this way, it's counteracted by that rod instead of putting that tension on the back. And so the theory there is it frees the back up to be more loose, not under tension. The back isn't holding the instrument together, it's the rod, and so the back can just do its thing. With the center brace on the back, what I've found is it allows it to vibrate in ways that support the E string a lot better. So on my more recent instruments, you'll notice that they have strong E notes all the way up, and that's one part of mandolins that tend to be lacking, especially if you have nice woody, choppy bass, chunky down low. They tend to suffer up high. But with the thin top and the stiffer back, what I've found is a good combination to get a much more balanced top to bottom.
If you had anything to say to aspiring builders, what do you think it would be?
my gosh. Well, one, do it. I'm sort of like a school of hard knocks when it comes to instrument building. Just dive in and figure it out as you go. So it took me about 15, I think, to get as far as fit and finish stuff figured out in a way. I've experimented with a ton of different finishes. I've settled on the ones that I like, but I would say just go for it, because you can have paralysis by analysis and not get anywhere by just overthinking stuff. I would say if you're thinking about building, that plan on building 3 or 4, because the first one is going to have it's just going to have issues, and if it doesn't, gosh, you're going to kill it. So I guess, yeah, that's what I would say. I have a course on how to build them. It's 14 hours, just about 14 hours, start to finish, from scratch, A-style mandolin. Hopefully this year I'll be doing an add-on to that to address the parts of an F-style. The additional, like 20 or 30 hours just that the scroll adds to the process. So I'm hoping to get that done with Robbie O'Brien this year. This is kind of midway through applying finish process. After all the final sanding gets done, I tape the binding so that there's not as much finish to scrape off. If I were to scrape off the entire color off that, it would take forever. So this is just a fast way about that. I spray a sunburst with a airbrush because I like the graduation, the fade that you can get that way. You can do it by hand. In my building video, I show how to do a sunburst by hand, and I'm just not as huge a fan of that. It looks authentic. It looks, like an old Gibson or whatever, but I just like the airbrushed sunburst. So then I seal with shellac. Sometimes I'll seal with true oil. It depends on kind of just how I'm feeling. Sometimes it depends on how cold it is outside, because when I spray shellac, I like to do it outside. When I spray anything, I like to do it outside, even though I am set up to do in here as well. And then once I have a reasonable solid layer of finish, then I go into the French polish on mandolins. So French polish is just, you take alcohol with shellac dissolved in it, and you just wipe it over the top, small little circles like that, or wipe it over the surface, and the alcohol dissolves immediately. You can touch it within 2 seconds, and it lays down this microscopically thin layer of shellac. And each layer each layer dissolves into the next, so you have a nice continuous film for your finish. And that's how I do my mandolins. And then the final polish with French polish is the polish. There's no buffing wheels or anything. It goes on in a polished state. So the cool thing about French polish is getting it to shine is always an addition process, whereas with sprayed and other finishes, you build it up and then you have to sand down to polish. And so it's hard to gauge sometimes how thick the finish is when you're polishing is a reductive process. With the French polish, I can make a really, really thin finish that gets excellent coverage and good protection. And the cool thing with French polish also is that it's very easy to repair. So if it gets scratched or anything like that, and it's softer than lacquer for sure. But I like honest playware too. So for that reason, I love French polish for mandolins. I think it's the way to go.